The massive doors were made of something darker than obsidian. They stood over 300 feet tall, and they were opening slowly, revealing what lay beyond. Ambassador Marcus Webb took a deep breath and stepped forward into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. The chamber stretched so far that clouds actually formed near its distant ceiling. 12,000 species filled the rising tiers of seats that climbed upward into darkness. Every eye, every sensor, every form of perception that existed in the known universe turned to focus on the 5 humans who had just entered. Marcus kept walking. His footsteps echoed against the crystal floor like a heartbeat. Behind him walked Dr. Elena Vasquez, General Thomas Reeve, Cultural Specialist Priya Sharma, and Communications Officer David Okafor. 5 humans. 5 tiny figures in a space designed to make entire civilizations feel small. And it was working. Suspended above them on platforms made of solid light sat the 7 arbiters. These were the oldest beings in the galaxy. They had ruled for 900 million years. They had watched stars be born and die. They had seen 10,000 species rise and fall. The Vethrani arbiter spoke first. It was a creature of constantly shifting geometric shapes, angles folding into angles, dimensions that hurt the human eye to observe. Its voice came through the yell. Translation implants like cold metal. Species 7,291. Designation human. Origin Sol 3. You have been summoned to answer for your transgressions. Marcus bowed his head slightly. The United Earth Coalition acknowledges this summons. We come in peace and with respect for this ancient body. A sound rippled through the chamber. It might have been laughter. It might have been something worse. That the Krellvax arbiter leaned forward. It looked like living mercury, constantly reforming itself, never holding one shape for more than a second. Peace, yes. Your species speaks often of peace while spreading across 43 star systems without authorization, while establishing trade routes outside council oversight, while refusing integration into the galactic community. We meant no offense, Marcus said carefully. We were unaware of these requirements. Our species has only been traveling between stars for less than 2 centuries. We are still learning. Ignorance is not a defense, said the Domri arbiter. It was a creature of glowing tendrils, bioluminescent and ancient beyond measure. Ignorance is simply another form of arrogance. The chamber fell silent as the Primarch rose from his position at the center of the 7. He was the oldest of them all. His form was almost humanoid, but stretched and wrong. His skin looked like polished black stone. His eyes contained actual swirling galaxies, stars being born and dying in those terrible depths. Ambassador Webb, the Primarch said. His voice was gentle, almost kind, but it carried to every corner of that impossible space. Let us speak plainly. You are here because every species that wishes to exist within the galactic community must pay tribute. This has been the law since before your sun ignited. It is how peace is maintained. It is how the weak are protected from the strong. It is how order survives. Marcus felt his team tense behind him. He could sense General Reeves' hand moving instinctively toward where his weapon would have been, if weapons had been permitted in this chamber. What tribute does the Council require of humanity? Marcus asked. The Primarch smiled. At least his face made a movement that might have been a smile. Nothing you cannot afford to give. 60% of all resources extracted from your 43 systems. A reduction of your military capacity by 80%. Complete genetic cataloging of your species for the Council archives. And 500,000 of your young each cycle to serve the Council in whatever capacity we require. The words landed like physical blows. Dr. Vasquez whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. General Reeves' face went pale with rage. Priya grabbed David's arm to steady herself. These terms, Marcus said slowly, fighting to keep his voice steady, are significant. These terms are generous, the Primarch replied. Every species has paid. The Krelvax surrendered the molten core of their homeworld. The Vethrani gave up their ability to reproduce naturally, and now exist only as the Council permits. The Damari sacrificed their immortality. Each species gives what we demand, and in return, they are permitted to exist. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber. They showed a fleet unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Thousands of warships. Planet crackers capable of reducing Earth to rubble in hours. Weapons that bent the laws of physics in ways human science could not explain. All of it positioned just outside the Sol system. You have 30 of your Earth days to deliver your response, the Primarch said. Consider carefully. No species has ever refused the Council and survived. Your predecessors in defiance are not even memories. They are less than dust. The obsidian doors began to close behind them, cutting off their retreat. Marcus stood perfectly still. His mind was racing, but his face remained calm. He had spent 30 years in diplomatic service. He had negotiated with terrorists, with dictators, with madmen who held nuclear weapons. But nothing had prepared him for this. Then something happened that would change everything. A tiny signal flashed on David's communication device. It should have been impossible. All outside communications were blocked within the Council chamber. Yet there it was, a message forcing its way through encryption that had been perfected over millions of years. David's eyes widened. He leaned close to Marcus and whispered 3 words. They fear us. Marcus did not react outwardly, but inside something shifted. He looked up at the 7 arbiters, at the Primarch with his galaxy eyes, at the 12,000 species watching humanity receive its death sentence, and he began to wonder why the most powerful beings in the universe had bothered to threaten them at. All. The doors closed with a sound like the ending of worlds. The human delegation stood in darkness for a long moment. Then emergency lights flickered on, revealing a corridor that would lead them back to their ship. What do we do? Priya asked, her voice shaking. Marcus was already walking. We go home. We tell them what happened. And then we find out who sent that message and what they know. And the tribute? General Reeve demanded. We cannot possibly meet those demands. They want our children. They want to disarm us completely. Marcus stopped at the entrance to their shuttle. He turned to face his team, and something in his eyes had changed. The diplomat was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Something that had been forged in humanity's long history of refusing to kneel. Then we do not meet them, he said quietly. We find another way. The shuttle doors closed, and humanity began its journey home. They had 30 days to save their species. The clock was already ticking. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, the leaders of Earth gathered. President Amara Diallo sat at the head of a long table made of reinforced steel. Around her sat the presidents, prime ministers, and chancellors of every major nation on Earth. For the first time in human history, there were no arguments, no politics, no old grudges. There was only fear and the desperate need to survive. Let me make sure I understand correctly, said Premier Viktor Volkov, his voice heavy with disbelief. They want 60% of everything we produce. They want to take our weapons. They want our genetic information. And they want 500,000 of our children every year. Ambassador Marcus Webb nodded from his position at the holographic display. That is correct, Premier. And if we refuse, they destroy us. Then we fight, said Chancellor Friedrich Brenner, slamming his palm against the table. We are not cattle to be harvested. We are humanity. We have faced extinction before and survived. General Reeve shook his head slowly. With respect, Chancellor, I have seen their fleet. One of their smallest weapons could crack Earth like an egg. We have nothing that could even scratch the paint on their ships. Fighting them would be suicide. Silence fell over the room. It was the silence of people facing an impossible choice between slavery and death. President Diallo had not spoken yet. She was studying a tablet, her dark eyes moving across data that her science teams had been compiling since the delegation returned. Finally, she looked up. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, "tell them what you told me this morning." Elena Vasquez stepped forward nervously. She was a scientist, not a politician. Speaking to world leaders was not something she had ever planned to do. Over the past 17 years of interstellar contact, we have been quietly studying every species we encountered, their technologies, their histories, their weaknesses. She activated a holographic display showing complex data streams. The Council's power is not really military. It is psychological. Every species pays tribute because every species believes they have no choice. Because the alternative is destruction, Premier Volkov said. That is what everyone believes, yes. But here is the strange thing. Elena pulled up a historical graph showing tribute payments over millions of years. I have found records of species refusing tribute before. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. But I cannot find any record of the promised destruction actually happening. The room stirred with confusion. What do you mean? President Diallo asked. I mean that species who refused simply vanished from the historical record. No battles. No genocide. Just silence. As if they were erased. Elena looked around the room. Either the Council destroyed them so completely that nothing remained, or something else happened. Something the Council does not want anyone to know about. Meanwhile, on the other side of Earth, Priya Sharma was following her own lead. The mysterious message that had reached David's communicator had contained more than just words. Hidden in the signal was a set of coordinates pointing to a dead star. System far beyond explored space, dot against every protocol and every instinct for self-preservation. Priya had convinced David to accompany her there in a small research vessel. What they found made them forget how to breathe. Floating in the darkness, between dead worlds was a station. It was ancient beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Its architecture did not match any known species. Its surfaces were covered in writing that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Inside, they found records. Thousands of them. Holographic testimonies from species that had existed millions of years ago. We refused the tribute, said one recording. The being who spoke was made of living light, beautiful and terrifying. We proved that the Council did not destroy everyone who said no. And for that crime, they erased us from history. They made every other species believe that refusal meant death. But it was a lie. It was always a lie. Priya's hands trembled as she downloaded file after file. There is more, David said, his voice barely a whisper. He had found a message that was addressed specifically to humanity. The timestamp showed it had been waiting for over 50 million years. You are the ones we calculated would find this place, the recording said. Your species has something the Council fears more than weapons, more than technology, more than numbers. You have spite. You have the willingness to burn everything rather than kneel. The Council has never faced a species willing to destroy itself to destroy them. The being of light flickered and faded slightly. We have left you a gift. In your own moon, buried deep beneath the surface, is a seed. It contains everything we knew, every weapon, every technology, every secret. Find it, use it, and do what we could not do. The recording ended with coordinates pointing to Earth's moon. Back on Earth, General Reeve led a covert team to the lunar location. They dug through rock that had been undisturbed for millions of years. And deep in the darkness, they found it. The seed was small. It fit in the palm of a human hand. But the readings coming from it were impossible. Compressed inside that tiny object was an entire civilization's worth of knowledge. Weapons that could challenge even the Council's fleet. Shields that could protect entire solar systems. And something else. Something the ancient species had called the Prometheus Array. What does it do? President Diallo asked when she received the report. Dr. Vasquez studied the data with wide eyes. If we build it correctly, it creates a network of dimensional anchors around our solar system. Anyone who enters to attack us gets trapped. Their ships stop working. Their weapons go dead. And we can extend the effect outward for thousands of light years. How long to build it? 27 days. Maybe 26 if we push everyone to their limits. President Diallo closed her eyes for a long moment. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on her shoulders. Then she opened them again, and her voice was steel. Do it. Build everything. And tell no one outside this room. The construction began in secret. Factories that had been producing civilian goods suddenly went dark and started creating components for technology that should not have existed. Scientists worked without sleep. Engineers solved problems that should have been impossible. And far away, in the council chamber, the Primarch received a report that made even his ancient heart feel something like unease. Human activity in their solar system had increased by 400%. They were building something. The old being stared at the report for a long time. Then he summoned the other arbiters. They are not preparing surrender documents, he said quietly. Then what are they doing? The Primarch's galaxy eyes swirled with something that might have been worry. I do not know. And that is what frightens me. 20 days remained until the deadline. The galaxy held its breath. The 30th day arrived. With the cold silence of space, the grand chamber of the Galactic Council was more crowded than it had been in centuries. Word had spread across the galaxy that humanity was delivering its response to the tribute demand. 12,000 species packed the rising tiers of seats. Millions more watched through holographic broadcasts in systems scattered across the stars. Everyone wanted to witness the moment another young species bent its knee to the Council. Everyone expected Surrender. Ambassador Marcus Webb walked the crystal pathway alone this time. His delegation waited outside. This was something he needed to do by himself. His footsteps echoed through the impossible space, steady and calm, like a man walking to his own execution without fear. The 7 arbiters looked down from their platforms of light. The Primarch sat at their center, his galaxy eyes watching the small human approach. Species 7291, the Primarch intoned, his voice rolling through the chamber like distant thunder. Your 30 days have concluded. You stand before the Galactic Council to present your tribute. Speak. Marcus stopped at the center of the chamber. He looked up at beings who had ruled the galaxy since before Earth existed. He looked around at species who had surrendered everything to survive. And then he did something that no one expected. He smiled. Honored arbiters, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics of that ancient space. Members of the galactic community, humanity has considered your demands with great care. We understand the traditions of this body. We understand what you believe is the price of peace. He paused, letting the silence stretch. We decline. The chamber exploded. 12,000 species made sounds of shock, disbelief, and horror. Screams and roars and frequencies beyond human hearing filled the air. Some species fled for the exits. Others pressed forward, desperate to see what would happen next. The 7 arbiters did not move. You decline, the Krellvax arbiter repeated. its mercury form churning with something that might have been amusement. Then you have chosen the destruction of your species. The fleet will be dispatched within the hour. No, Marcus said calmly. We have chosen something else. He activated a small device in his hand. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, visible to every being present and to the millions watching across the galaxy. The displays showed Earth's solar system, and around it, where there had been nothing 30 days ago, now hung a lattice of devices. Thousands of them. They pulsed with energy that made even the Council's sensors struggle to comprehend. We call it the Prometheus Array, Marcus explained. It is a network of dimensional anchors. If your fleet attacks us, we activate it. Every hyperspace lane within 5,000 light years will collapse into normal space. Permanently. The Primarch's eyes narrowed. You would trap yourselves. Strand your species in an unreachable bubble of space for millennia. Yes, and we would take a significant portion of Council territory with us, including your primary shipyards, including 17 Arbiter homeworlds, including the central data cores of your entire civilization. Marcus's smile faded into something harder. You cannot reach us without destroying yourselves. And we are very, very willing to spend eternity in isolation if the alternative is kneeling to you. This is insanity, the Domri Arbiter hissed, its tendrils flashing with agitated light. No species would truly sacrifice everything just to avoid tribute. Humanity would. We have a long history of burning our own houses down rather than letting invaders claim them. Marcus stepped forward. But that is not why I came here today. I came to show you something else. Something your council has kept hidden for 900 million years. He changed the holographic display. The images of the Prometheus Array disappeared. In their place appeared the recordings Priya had found in the ancient station. The testimonies of extinct species. The truth about what happened to those who refused tribute. You have been lying, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Every species that refused tribute did not die. They could not be destroyed because they did exactly what we are doing now. They made the cost too high. So instead of admitting defeat, you erased them from history. You made everyone believe that refusal meant death. The recordings played across the chamber. Species that had been forgotten for millions of years spoke their truth to a galaxy that had never known they existed. Your power is not real, Marcus continued. It is a story, a myth. A lie told so many times that everyone forgot it was fiction. But we found the evidence, and we are broadcasting it right now to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The Arbiters finally moved. They exchanged glances with each other for the first time in recorded history. Something passed between them that might have been uncertainty, might have been fear. You have 30 of our days, Marcus said, throwing their own words back at them. Consider how you want to deal with humanity. Because we are not paying tribute, we are not surrendering our children. We are not giving you anything. He turned and began walking toward the obsidian doors. One more thing, he called over his shoulder. We have sent copies of everything to every species, currently paying tribute. I imagine some of them might want to have conversations with you about renegotiation. The doors opened before him. He stepped through without looking back. Behind him, the chamber descended into chaos. Species that had paid tribute for millions of years were demanding explanations. Council enforcers struggled to maintain order, and the 7 arbiters sat in stunned silence, watching their empire begin to crack. The Primarch raised his hand, and slowly, painfully, order returned to the chamber. This changes nothing, he announced, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. Humanity has made themselves enemies of the Council. They will be dealt with. But even as he spoke, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The Vralani Hive Collective had suspended its tribute payments pending investigation. The Thesan Deep Parliament was mobilizing its fleet. The Morta Trade Alliance was calling for an emergency session to discuss withdrawal from Council oversight. One species. 30 days. And everything the Council had built over 900 million years was beginning to unravel. In his private chamber later that night, the Primarch stared at a galaxy map covered in warning indicators. For the first time in his endless existence, he felt something he had forgotten was possible. His communication device activated with an incoming message from a source that should not have been able to reach him. The signal was ancient. Impossibly ancient. It contained only 5 words. The humans are not alone. The Primarch stared at those words for a very long time. Then he began making calls to allies he had hoped never to need. The real war was about to begin. Galaxy was on fire, not with flames, but with something more dangerous. Ideas, rebellion, hope. Within days of Ambassador Webb's broadcast, a carefully maintained order of 900 million years began crumbling like ancient stone. On the forge world of Kreshak Prime, the insectoid Vrelani stopped their endless labor for the first time in 60 million years. Their hive queen watched the humans' message 17 times before, issuing a command that had not been spoken since the tribute began. Cease all shipments immediately. On the water world of Thesan, massive whale-like beings who had surrendered their young to Council service for eons rose to the surface in numbers not seen in living memory. Their songs of grief turned to songs of anger. Their fleet began to mobilize. On 100 worlds, 1,000 worlds, 10,000 worlds. Species that had accepted their fate as permanent and unchangeable began to remember something they had been forced to forget. The concept of choice. The Primarch stood in his private chamber aboard the Council's command station, watching the galaxy map transform into a constellation of red warning lights. System after system went dark, not destroyed, but silent, unresponsive to Council authority. This is what the humans have done, the Krelvax Arbiter said, its liquid form churning with barely controlled rage. 1 species. 1 month. They have undone everything. Then we destroy them as promised, the Donnery Arbiter demanded. We make an example so terrible that the others return to obedience. The Primarch turned slowly. His galaxy eyes swirled with ancient patterns of light and darkness. Destroy them how? We cannot enter their system without triggering their trap. And even if we could, the damage is done. The secret is revealed. The lie is exposed. There must be a way. The Primarch was silent for a long moment. Then he activated a communication channel that had not been used in 300 million years. There is one way, but it requires allies we had hoped never to need. Far across the galaxy, in regions of space that most species pretended did not exist, the Primarch's call was answered. The Colothi mercantile hegemony, creatures of pure commerce who measured everything in profit and loss. The Sithrix enforcers, beings of blade and armor who existed only for battle. The Mordant tech priests, entities that had merged with their machines so completely that nothing organic remained. These were not species who paid tribute. These were species who collected it, who profited from the suffering of others, who had grown powerful in the shadow of Council rule. The humans threaten everything, the Primarch told their assembled leaders. If the tribute system falls, so does your wealth, your power, your purpose. The Colothi trade prince clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. What do you offer in return for our assistance? Anything. Any system, any resource, any species. Bring us the humans dead or contained, and the galaxy is yours to divide as you see fit. The Sithrix commander made a sound like grinding metal. Their trap makes direct attack impossible. We cannot reach their system. Not through normal space, no. The Primarch pulled up technical schematics. But there is another way. Ancient technology. Forbidden drives that can slip through dimensional barriers. The journey will destroy the ships that make it. They cannot return. But they can reach Earth. The displays focused on a single location on Earth's moon. The humans' power source. The thing they call the seed. Destroy it, and their trap collapses. Then our main fleet can enter and finish what remains. The three species exchanged glances. Then the Calathi trade prince extended a clawed appendage. We have a deal. While the Council's allies prepared their assault, something very different was happening in the Sol system. Ships were arriving. Not warships, but vessels carrying diplomats, scientists, and refugees from species that had decided to cast their fate with humanity. President Diallo found herself hosting the strangest gathering in Earth's history. The insectoid Vrelani Queen speaking through a translation device. The massive Thesan Elder, contained in a tank of water the size of a house. Representatives from species whose names human tongues could not pronounce. Why us? The president asked during a quiet moment with the Vrelani Queen. Your species is ancient, powerful. You could have done this. Yourselves. The Queen's mandibles clicked in what the translation device interpreted as amusement. We are ancient, yes. And age brings wisdom, but it also brings caution. We have learned too well how to survive by bowing. You humans are young. You have not yet learned to be afraid. We are plenty afraid, President Diallo admitted. Yes, but you act anyway. That is the difference. That is why we are here. But amid the hope and the growing alliance, Priya Sharma had discovered something that chilled her to the bone. She had been studying the ancient station's records continuously since her return. Most of it was technical data about the seed and its technology. But hidden in the deepest archives was a warning that had been encrypted separately from everything else. She finally broke the encryption on the 29th day since humanity's refusal. The seed is not just a gift, the ancient recording explained. It is a test, a judgment. The technology within is alive. It watches. It learns. It decides. Priya's blood ran cold as the recording continued. Many species found our seeds over the ages. Many tried to use the power within for conquest, for revenge, for domination. None of them survived. The seed recognized their intentions and destroyed everything it had created, along with everything the species had built. The being of light in the recording flickered sadly. We could not stop the council ourselves because we were not pure enough. We wanted revenge too badly. The seed rejected us in the end. We hid these stations hoping that someday a species would arise that could pass the test. A species that would use ultimate power not to destroy, but to free. The recording ended with a final warning. If the humans use this technology for vengeance, for conquest, for anything other than liberation, the seed will know, and it will end them. Priya sat in the darkness of her quarters for a long time, the weight of this knowledge pressing down on her. They had built weapons capable of challenging the council. They had allies ready to fight alongside them. They had everything they needed for victory. But if they used it wrong, they would destroy themselves. She had to tell President Diallo. She had to tell everyone. But before she could move, alarms began screaming throughout the facility. 3,000 enemy warships had materialized inside their defensive perimeter, using technology that should have been impossible. They were heading straight for the moon, for the seed, for the power source that protected everything. General Reeves' voice crackled over the communication system, tight with controlled fear. All forces to battle stations. This is not a drill. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. Priya ran for the command center. The ancient warning echoing in her mind. The test was about to begin, and humanity did not know the rules. The battle for Earth began in the cold silence of space. 3,000 Kalathi warships had torn through dimensional barriers, using drives that destroyed themselves in the crossing. They emerged inside humanity's defensive perimeter, beyond the Prometheus array, beyond all the carefully constructed protections. It was a one-way mission. None of them could ever return home. But they did not need to return. They only needed to destroy. Human ships scrambled to intercept. Outdated vessels, crewed by men and women who knew they were flying into death, threw themselves against an enemy they could not defeat. They did not fight to win. They fought to buy time, minutes, seconds, each moment paid for in human lives. General Reeve watched from the lunar command center as the tactical display filled with destruction. Human ships flickered and vanished. 1, 10, 100. The Kalathi fleet pushed forward, unstoppable, its weapons carving through everything humanity sent against it. "We are losing," he said, his voice hollow. President Diallo stood beside him, her face carved from stone. "How long until our allies arrive?" 14 hours. Minimum. We do not have 14 hours. At that moment, Kriya burst into the command center, her face white with terror and something else, something like desperate hope. "Stop," she gasped. "Before you do anything else, you need to know something." She explained what she had discovered. The seed was not just a gift. It was a judgment. If they used its power for destruction, for vengeance, for anything other than liberation, it would recognize their intentions, and it would destroy them. The room fell silent, except for the distant rumble of explosions as human ships continued to die. "So we cannot use the weapons," General Reeves said flatly. "We cannot defend ourselves. We simply die." "No." Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward, her eyes bright with a sudden understanding. "We can use the technology. We just cannot use it to destroy. We have to use it to save." "Save who?" Ambassador Webb demanded. "They are trying to kill us. Everyone." Elena turned to President Diallo. "Madam President, the seed contains more than weapons. It contains everything those ancient species ever created, including things they built to end wars, not win them." President Diallo looked at the tactical display. Half the human fleet was gone. The Kalathi ships were entering lunar orbit. In minutes, they would reach the facility housing the seed. Housing everything. She thought about her children, about all the children of Earth, about the 500,000 young people the Council had demanded as tribute. She thought about every species that had knelt before the Council, every world that had surrendered its future, every civilization that had traded its freedom for survival, and she made a choice. "Elena," she said quietly, "show me what else the seed can do." In the depths of the lunar facility, surrounded by technology that predated humanity by millions of years, Elena worked frantically. Her hands moved across interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. The seed pulsed with golden light, alive, watching, waiting. "There," she said finally. "A neutralization wave. It can spread through space at faster than light speeds. Anything it touches becomes inert. Weapons stop working. Engines go quiet, but life support remains active. It would stop the attack," General Reeves said slowly, "but it would also stop us. Our weapons, our ships, everything." "Not just us," Elena replied. "The wave does not discriminate. It will spread across the galaxy. Every weapon, every war machine, every instrument of death ever created, all of it silenced." The room erupted in argument. Military leaders demanded the right to fight. Diplomats worried about leaving humanity defenseless. Scientists questioned whether it would even work. President Diallo listened to all of it. Then she raised her hand, and silence fell. "We have spent our entire history solving problems with violence," she said, "and it has brought us nothing but more violence. The Council has spent 900 million years threatening species into submission, and it has brought them only a galaxy of resentment waiting to explode." She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Maybe it is time to try something different. Maybe it is time to see what we can build without weapons to hide behind." She turned to Elena. "Do it." The wave began at the moon and spread outward at speeds that should have been impossible. Passed through the HFY fleet like a whisper. 3,000 warships went silent. Weapons powered down. Engines died. The massive vessels drifted harmlessly in the void, their crews alive but unable to fight. The wave continued outward, passing through the dimensional barriers of the Prometheus array. It swept across the Sol system, silencing every weapon, every military vessel, every instrument of war humanity had ever built. And then it kept going. It reached the Council fleet waiting outside the system. Dreadnoughts the size of moons went dark. Planet crackers capable of destroying worlds became nothing more than metal shells. It spread to the Vrelani worlds, the Thesan oceans, the Calathi homeworld, the Sithrix battle stations. It touched every corner of the galaxy that had ever known war. And everywhere it went, the same thing happened. Weapons fell silent. All weapons. Everywhere. The galaxy held its breath. In the Grand Chamber, the Primarch stood surrounded by arbiters who had lost all their power in the space of moments. Their fleet was dead metal. Their enforcers were unarmed. 900 million years of military supremacy had vanished in an instant. The obsidian doors opened, and Ambassador Webb walked in alone. "The seed has spoken," he said simply. "It judged all of us and found the galaxy wanting. For too long, peace has meant pointing weapons at each other and threatening destruction. That peace is over now. You have destroyed order," the Primarch whispered. "Without weapons, civilizations will tear themselves apart." "Maybe," Webb admitted. "Or maybe they will learn to solve problems the way we have had to do 1,000 times in our short history. By talking. By compromising. By finding solutions that do not require someone to die." He walked closer to the ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy since before Earth existed. "You demanded tribute from humanity. You expected us to kneel like every species before us. Instead, we gave you something you never expected." His voice softened. "We gave you the chance to change." 1 year later, the Grand Chamber looked very different. The 7 arbiters no longer sat on elevated platforms. They sat at a round table, equal in height to every other representative. The tribute system had been dissolved. Voluntary cooperation agreements had taken its place. It was not perfect. Old hatreds ran deep. Species that had suffered for millions of years struggled to forgive. Those who had enforced council rule faced justice for crimes spanning eons. But for the first time in galactic memory, every species had a voice. Every species had a choice. Ambassador Webb stood before the assembly one final time before his retirement. "A year ago, you demanded tribute from humanity. You expected us to surrender. Instead, we gave you something that had never been offered before." He looked around at the changed faces, the new relationships, the fragile but real hope in that ancient chamber. "We gave you the chance to be something better. And you took it." As he walked out for the last time, Priya fell into step beside him. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. "Peace, I mean." "Real peace." Webb looked up at the stars. "I do not know. We are still figuring out how to be peaceful with ourselves, let alone an entire galaxy." He smiled. "But that is the point. We are not supposed to know how it ends. We are just supposed to try." Behind them, The galaxy was finally, truly at peace. And humanity, small and young and impossibly stubborn, had shown them the way. The council had demanded tribute. Humanity had given them something far more valuable, a future.